Hello, I'm Dr. Leon Stutzman, aka Doc, with another one of these little videos to try to help you to get through these strange days in which we find ourselves, and these yet remain strange days. Indeed, they really are. I'm talking this week about 7 signs of a poverty mentality. I won't get to all 7 signs, but let me give you a quick recap. The number 1 sign of a poverty mentality is you don't like prosperity preaching. People that have a poverty mentality don't want to move out of their poverty. Number 2, the inability to say, I don't know. Poor people can't say, I don't know. Some of the most liberating words you will ever learn are, I don't know. And oftentimes I've had to do that, throw my hands up in the air and say, I just don't know. The 3rd sign of a poverty mentality is you don't have a plan. You have to have a plan. Proverbs 20 verse 5, a plan in the heart of man, plan in the heart of woman is like deep water, but a man or woman of understanding will draw it out. Why is a plan like deep water? Because water is fluid. And oftentimes circumstances and situations change and the plan has to be adjusted. You have to have a plan, which brings me to the 4th sign of a poverty mentality, and that is the inability to change. Some people just can't change. It's difficult to change a poverty mentality. Not impossible, but it is difficult to change a poverty mentality. I grew up poor. How poor were we? Well, we had one house in Riverside, California, that whenever it rained, I had 18 mason jars in my bedroom to catch the drips from the roof leaks. The roof leaked. Oftentimes, while living in that house, we'd go fishing in the evening so we'd have some meat on the table. I was raised in poverty. Later, I was living on the east side of Dallas in a very, very poor and rough neighborhood. But there I began to develop a prosperity consciousness. Change was initiated. I read the Dallas Times-Herald, Dallas Morning News, read about the great restaurants in Dallas, read about the great hotels in Dallas, and I thought I could live that way. And I began, even before I became a Christian, to develop a prosperous mentality, even though I was still abjectly poor. It's difficult to change a poverty mentality, but you can if you make the change. If you're willing to make change in your life, anything can happen if you're willing to make the right kinds of changes in your life. You have to be able to change. Now, let me suggest there are several things that will precipitate this kind of change in your life. Change happens when the pain of poverty or the problem becomes greater than the pain of change. Let me say that again. I want you to get it. Change happens when the pain of poverty or the problem becomes greater than the pain of change. There's a certain amount of pain to change because we like to stay in our comfort zone. But when the problem or the poverty becomes so painful that you can't stand it any longer, then you're going to bring about change in your life. I began to prosper when I decided I just didn't want to be poor. I had a wife, I had a baby girl, had a dog and a cat. We're traveling, we're poor, we're living from week to week, and it was a struggle. I realized one day I could no longer afford the luxury of poverty, so I initiated change. Change happens when something better is presented. That's why I will always preach prosperity. I have a 2nd generation now coming up that's set under my ministry, and they're all prosperous people. Why? Because I presented prosperity to them just as I'm presenting prosperity to you. Change happens when something better is presented as available. Change happens when consciousness is raised. A poverty mentality asserts you're not worth whatever prosperity may come your way. That's a poverty mentality. I'm just not worth it. Change happens when your consciousness is raised. I was having a discussion with my mother one day. She was raised in Oklahoma, California, a farm girl. She said to me one day, she said, boy, I think you're trying to get above your raising. I looked at her and I said, Mother, I want you to understand beyond a shadow of doubt, unequivocally, I am doing everything I can to get as far above my raising as I possibly can. And she laughed. Well, she went through a struggle in the later years of her life. We brought her to Ohio. She was just living on a little Social Security check. But she began to change. She embraced what I teach. She's wrapped her head around it, began to apply the principles that I teach, and soon she had a nice income. And before she passed away, she had a big income. She was actually quite wealthy when she passed away because she had a change of consciousness. When you have a change of consciousness, you will prosper. And that's my heart's desire for you. I want to see you prosper. This Sunday at Aspire Church, I heard a word from God when I was in prayer last week, raise expectations. So we're going to raise our expectations this Sunday. You want to make the rest of your life the best of your life, you're going to have to raise your expectations. We'll do it this Sunday. Catch it live on the live stream at AspireChurch.tv, on Facebook at Aspire Church TV. That's Facebook Aspire Church TV, live stream AspireChurch.tv, Sunday morning, 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. It's going to be powerful. It will raise your consciousness and it will raise your expectations. I'm Dr. Leon Stutzman, a.k.a. Doc. I'll see you then.